Recording live from the virtual Lucky Number 7 Lounge, this is Dine, Drink Vegas, the podcast by and for everybody stuck at home wishing they were in the land of neon lights and bad decisions. I'm your host, John, a.k.a. The Baller on a Budget, and you have found episode number 39, the Las Vegas Limbo, in which we ask, how low can these tourist statistics go? We're also going to bring you our drink of the day, and of course, we're going to highlight some of the news stories that at least we thought were interesting. But before we could do any of that, of course, we have to welcome in the founder of Dine, Drink Travel himself, the high roller formerly of the High Plains, the king of comps, the leader in the luxury lounge, the Alabama slammer, the man who in just days will be waiting for that limo to carry him away to his next luxury resort. Of course, I can only be speaking about Bill. Good afternoon, Bill. How are you, sir?
I am drinking with a friend, and in 48 hours we'll be on a plane from Dallas to Vegas, and because it's American Airlines, there's no chance at all that goes wrong. How are you?
I am doing great. Now, listeners, we should let you know that we are recording early, so by the time we actually release this, it'll be a little bit stale, so that means the news will not be bleeding edge news, but let's be real, you don't tune into us for that. And we are continuing our Drink of the Day series with another Tiki Classic. Now, this is summer drinks, not just Tiki drinks, because Tiki is not necessarily Bill's wheelhouse. But today, we've trotted out one of the Tiki Classics, Navy Grog. So, Bill, why don't you run everybody through the ingredient list for the Dawn the Beachcomber version? Then I'll talk about how the original from Trader Vic's differs. And then we can talk about what you and I actually did.
So, the Dawn the Beachcomber version of Navy Grog has 3 different kinds of rum, and I am not the rum expert you are, John, so I'm pretty sure I did this right. But it calls for 1 ounce of a dark Jamaican rum, 1 ounce of a Aged Demerara Rum, and 1 ounce of a white rum. It says Cuban or Puerto Rican, although I went with the Captain, which is, let's say, probably made somewhere in the Caribbean. It calls for 1 ounce of honey syrup, which I got hung up on because I've got honey. I don't have honey syrup, but there's some ways to deal with that. 3/4 of an ounce of club soda, 3/4 of an ounce of freshly squeezed grapefruit juice, 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice freshly squeezed, and then for garnish, a mint sprig and a lime wheel. And I guess my first reaction to this drink is that it is an enormous pain in the posterior to make, because, gosh, that's a lot of ingredients, and I was squeezing a lot of things. Like, it took me 10 or 15 minutes to pour the cocktail, and my version of drinking is usually more like the pub and cork, where you're like, pour me a glass full of whiskey, and they're like right on top of it. So, good drink, super complicated, but before we go into it, talk to us a little bit about what is in the Trader Vic's version of it, John.
So I do want to highlight the difference between the two. Liquor.com, which is often where we get our drink recipes from, they highlight the Dawn the Beachcomber version, but Trader Vic's was first. Similar list, Trader Vic's is a little bit more complicated and a little bit more precise. So they call for specifically 1 ounce of Aged Trinidad Rum, 1 ounce of Aged Demerara Rum, 1 ounce of Aged Jamaican Rum, 1/4 ounce of Allspice Dram, which is not an everyday ingredient, 1/4 ounce of Demerara syrup, 3/4 of an ounce each of grapefruit and lime juice, and all of that. And by the way, this is true for both of these drinks. What I'm about to say for Trader Vic's, true for Dawn the Beachcomber. All the liquid except club soda, if you're using it, goes into your shaker with the ice. You shake it like it owes you money. You shake it the way that doctors tell you to never shake a crying baby. You shake it like your mama gave it to you. You shake it, shake it, shake it. And then, 2 schools of thought, you can strain it and pour over shaved ice if you like that snow cone style. Me, I just dumped Isanol into my glass. Then, if you're topping up with the club soda, the way Dawn the Beachcomber does, you add that at that time. Garnish with a big mint sprig in your favorite tiki glass, or in my case, Southern boy that I am, a Coca-Cola glass. And away we go. Now, Bill, are there any ingredients that you subbed out or zigged where they zagged?
So Not much, right? Like a little bit. But the rums I did as it called for, the only place where I really had to zig where they zagged is I didn't have honey syrup. So I poured in what looked kind of sort of like about an ounce of honey before I shook it up. And I noticed that did not make it sweet at all. So after I finished the drink, I put in just a little bit of simple syrup because the drink's okay, but there's a lot of bitterness in it. And I wanted a little bit of sweetness to offset that. You said on the last episode of the podcast, that Jamaican rum has a funkiness to it. I used a Jamaican rum this time. It absolutely does. And I wanted a little bit of sweet to offset that funkiness combined with the tartness of the grape juice, combined with the tartness of the lime. Like it needed something to help.
Yeah, no, and I get that, and with we talked about this last episode. With all tiki drinks, you're trying to balance sweet, bitter, and complex, right? You don't want it out of balance. You don't want a drink that's woo girl 20-something sorority chick party daiquiri sweet. You don't want a bracing bitterness. You want everything to play together nicely. What I wound up doing was sort of a hybrid of the two recipes. So Don the Beachcomber doesn't really say much about whether or not the rum should be aged. Vic says all the rum should be aged. So here's what I did. I used 1.5 ounces of Plantaray OFTD, which is a 69% alcohol by volume blend of rums. It's got some aged components. It's got Jamaican, it's got Trinidad, it's got Demerara, it's got Dominican. It's a blend of things. I also used some of the 3-star, and then I also used, to round out to 2 ounces, then I used a full ounce of 8-year-old aged Bacardi. So a Puerto Rican rum, which is neither of these call for, but that's what my liquor store had available to me. So I did that blend, which was sort of between the two recipes. The other thing I did is I made Allspice Dram. Now, listeners, as you know by now, I'm diabetic. I'm always looking for ways to cut sugar. I took a whole bunch of allspice berries, crushed them super fine, added a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of Angostura bitters, steeped them in hot water. And then once that hot water cooled down, I then added some rum, put the whole thing through an AeroPress, which is a coffee maker, so I could strain all the fine bits out. And I made kind of a syrup with it. But if you do the Trader Vic's version with the allspice, it's not very sweet at all. You got a 1/2 ounce of sweetener altogether. There's sweetener in Allspice Dram, there's sweetener in Demerara syrup, but altogether it's just a 1/2 ounce. Well, the Don the Beachcomber recipe has 1 ounce of honey syrup, which is half honey and half water or simple syrup. So I kind of did 1 ounce total of sweetener, 1/4 ounce of the Dram, and then I made my own honey syrup out of Splenda makes a honey-flavored Splenda syrup. I did that 1/2 and 1/2 with Jordan's skinny syrup, simple syrup. So I do think this drink needs more sweetness to balance out that grapefruit, like you said, right? The juice is the same, but then I did go ahead and add the club soda as well to lengthen the drink. And I think if you lengthen it with the club soda, you get a little bit of carbonation. Go ahead and lean towards the sweeter side to balance out that grapefruit addition to tame the Jamaican rum. And Bill, here's an important part. I think those funky Jamaican rums need the spices. If you don't want to make your own allspice dram, a few shakes of our good old friend Angostura would have done the trick. I do think Jamaican rum, that really funky banana ester, Laffy Taffy, weird, yeasty character, needs some baking spices to balance it out. Shaking it with garnishing with a cinnamon stick might have done the trick too. I do think you need a little bit of spice there. And then that mint sprig is everything, because that fresh blast of mint on the nose really helps this thing come together. So, Bill, would you drink a Navy Grog again?
I would drink it again. I don't know that I would make it again. Because listeners, John knows this, but my liquor cabinet contains 500 million kinds of Irish whiskey and about 700 million kinds of American bourbon. Then there's like a scotch for when John comes by, and then a couple of gins, couple of vodkas, and a couple of rums. but it's a lot of ingredients to keep up with. And usually when I'm wanting to have a drink, I just want to have my dang drink and I want to move on for the day. Side note, and John and I were talking about this before the episode, but roughly a quarter of our listeners so far this calendar year, like several hundred people, come from the Republic of Ireland. And I effectively do the sort of, I've spent a fair amount of time in Ireland over the last year or so because I've got a kid who goes to college there. Mostly when I want to drink, I do the Irish pub approach to drinking. I politely ask for whatever I want them to pour in a glass. They say, yes, of course, here you go. And then we both carry on with our days. So to answer your question, it's delicious. I would do it again. Gosh, it's a pain in the butt to make when I could simply pour a good whiskey in my glass and, if I felt like it, add ice.
Yeah, and I guess I'm on a secret mission to make you a bit of a mixologist. Even if it's not your wheelhouse and you just want a simple spirit over ice, maybe with a dash of bitters, maybe a splash of sweetener, but nothing complicated. I do think there's great joy in mixology, and if nothing else, I'm in charge of that part of the podcast, so it's fun to torture you. All right, let's jump ahead out of the drink of the day, Bill, into our main story. So listeners, we've hinted at this the last two episodes. The Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority keeps track of data every month. Several content creators have pounced on this. There's been a lot of discussions about it. There are some definitive trends in the data for January, February, and March, the first quarter one of 2025 compared to 2024. And they do start to tell a story that I would like Bill to weigh in on. So Bill and I have this data in front of us. You can look this all up online. We're not making any of this up. Visitor volume, first of all, let's start with this. Visitor volume has been down every month in this quarter. So going with March, the latest month they had data for, 7.8% fewer visitors in March 2025 versus March 2024. There's a number of reasons for this. And in the analysis that follows, Bill and I are going to analyze this as the American tourists we are. Now, as Bill already pointed out, a quarter of our listeners are from outside of the United States. We have a handful of Canadians, handful of people from the United Kingdom, and a surprising number from Ireland. If any of our international listeners want to weigh in on whether or not you even want to visit any part of the United States right now with everything going on, by all means, feel free to comment. If we get some good comments, we'll share them in the next episode. There's a lot of political reasons why this is not a politics podcast. Bill and I have political opinions, but frankly, we're here to talk about Vegas, not politics. And we're not going to speak for international tourists. We are big, fat, Southern Bubba Americans, and we can speak to our demographic. So any international listeners that want to weigh in, we would love your feedback. But the analysis that follows is what we think these numbers say about how the American tourist is responding in this economic moment to the city of Las Vegas. And to that point, Bill, I want to highlight a couple of trends. And let's start with room occupancy. Overall occupancy in Las Vegas hotel rooms is down in all 3 months, 3.0 in January, 3.4 in February, 2.4 in March. Doesn't matter if it's weekend or weekday, it's down. And those downward trends, except for January where there is a Super Bowl bump, February and March, it's on the Strip. But downtown had a good January too, a better January than the Strip, 4.9% growth over the previous year versus 3.1 for the Strip. They did have a worse February, 3.6 loss versus 3.1 for the Strip. But look at March. Strip's down 2.5%, downtown's up 2.7. By the same token, I want to look at the daily room rates. The Strip and downtown offered some discounts in February because February is an off month. But in March, The Strip increased prices in March 25 versus March 24 by 3.1%. Downtown gave a 0.7% discount, which coincidentally matches the percentage of growth from the previous year. In other words, downtown charges less per room, but they filled more rooms. Let's jump over to gambling data. Same trend, but even bigger. January's kind of an outlier, right? Super Bowl betting. The Strip had a monster January, up 22.4% from the previous year. Super Bowl numbers. But in February, down 13.8% from the previous year. In March, down 4.8%. But downtown, which was down in both January and February, grew by 11.6% in March of 25 versus March of 24. In other words, the data tells us that in these economic conditions, downtown is doing better year over year, while the Strip is doing worse year over year. Bill, what do you attribute that to?
So I think there are a couple of different things, and one of them, I think there is some significant discount hunting. There has been a fair amount of economic turbulence over the last couple of months, but people still want to take vacations, and if you're looking for discounts, you don't go to the Las Vegas Strip. If you're looking for discounts, you go downtown. Second, and while mostly wanting to focus on domestic travelers, I think part of it is a short-term decline in international travels as, we figure out things like who's going to tariff who and what political relationships are going to be and all of that. I suspect all of that, though, to actually change over the next few months because the value of the U.S. dollar has declined over the last couple of months. What that means is if, let's say you are the quarter of our audience who's Irish and you're getting paid in euros, those euros are going to be able to buy more dollars. But I think that you see some value hunting. I also think you see a temporary decrease in international travelers. And I think that that's going to reverse as, international travelers realize that their money buys more. What are you looking at, John? Or what are you seeing in these numbers?
I think you're right on both counts. I do want to highlight Jacob's Life in Vegas does a really good job of tracking things like how many properties on the Strip hide extra fees in your hotel, in your dining fees. That's become common in a lot of restaurants on the Strip, that there's a quote-unquote service charge that isn't baked into the price of the menu items. So you get your receipt, and here's a 2% or 4% or 6% bump in your overall bill that was not really stated in the menu prices, things like that. I think there is a perception that Strip properties are nickeling and diming guests and squeezing them at every turn. And I think there's hard data to back up that perception. Meanwhile, I think downtown properties recognize that, and they're capitalizing on that by offering deals. Like the Plaza started last year with all-inclusive deals. You book a stay and you get meals and drinks and things baked in. Circa has some package deals going on right now. So the two big movers and shakers downtown, Jonathan Jossel at the Plaza and Derek Stevens at his three properties, Circa, the D, and Golden Gate, they're recognizing that consumers are looking for deals. I don't know of any downtown property that has these hidden service fees. The price is the price. If you ordered a $38 steak and a $15 cocktail and a $10 appetizer and you get your check, the numbers look like what you expected. You didn't have to look at the fine print to see that there was going to be some kind of bump in there. And I do think, and you and I, we had 3 episodes ago, we had a love fest for MGM. You and I like MGM properties. We have a Labor Day trip booked for MGM properties coming up later this year. We're not anti-strip, but clearly, if you're trying to get the most value for your trip to Vegas and the most transparency in your pricing, the people downtown are doing you better than the people on the Strip. I don't think there's any argument for that. The Strip seems to be Yeah. The Strip wants to squeeze every penny of every body that shows up. Downtown wants to increase the number of bodies. One's doing percentage, the other's doing volume. And whenever your model's based on volume, that's better for the consumer.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely better for the consumer. What I'm wondering is how long these numbers stay this way before the folks on the Strip wind up having to make different economic choices. The trip that I'm making this week, by the time this releases, the trip I will have just finished is mostly a Strip trip, and I will look at I'll look at what's going on there, and we can talk about it in the next episode. But it's if you've got a 2 or 3 month economic blip, then you can try to do what the people on the Strip are doing. If, on the other hand, tourism numbers stay down for 6 months or 9 months or a year, I mean, let's say you're charging double the price, but your basis is zero because nobody's coming, you're still not making money. I'm curious about how long tourism's down before the folks on the Strip have to discount to get some warm bodies in.
Well, let me give an anecdotal story. So we talked about the new MGM rewards. I told the listeners that I already had an MGM credit card. Well, I bit the bullet and I upgraded to the Iconic card. Since we already had a trip booked, you're staying at the W. I had planned to save money and stay over at the Luxor so I could walk over. Well, when I got my new credit card, I wanted my room booked on that credit card, so I canceled the existing reservation, logged back into my system to get my offer because you can't see your offer value on dates you're already booked. And lo and behold, all of a sudden, the rates to stay at the W where you guys are staying were affordable enough that I went ahead and booked the W, and I even added the VIP lounge. And I posted
about this. And I am so proud of you. Yeah, I feel like you're growing up. Yeah.
Yeah, I went the luxury route. So I will say that MGM, at least, I haven't priced Caesars. MGM seems to be responding to this cool and demand that even though in March they did bump the price of their hotels from the previous year, y'all listen, I call myself the baller on a budget for a reason. I don't luxury out. Normally, on Labor Day weekend of all weekends, I can't afford the W. I can't. I just booked the W for Labor Day because it was only slightly more than the reservation I'd canceled at Luxor. Now, I probably could have got an even better deal at Luxor than I originally had if I had rebooked there. But the prices of the W look so good, I not only upgraded the W, I threw in the $75 a night for the VIP lounge so I can get my cappuccino, my latte, get a beer in the afternoon, get a glass of wine before dinner. I upgraded my W experience because financially that made sense. So I think we are starting to see at least MGM come around. Now, if they only do that on the hotel pricing, but they don't start killing some of these extra fees, even if the reality becomes the Strip actually isn't that bad a deal, the perception of these extra fees is really going to bite them in the butt because I think tourists right now, with everything going on economically, and we won't hash out whose fault it is and all of the politics, I don't think the American tourist wants to book a trip or walk into a restaurant and worry that there's a hidden fee they didn't catch in the fine print. And until the Strip stops doing that, until the visitor, the tourist, has confidence that the price I think I'm going to pay is the price I'm going to pay, I think downtown's going to continue to gain the advantage. I think that's going to hold because I think people are tired of the bait and switch of you saw this price on the menu, you didn't read the fine print, your bill's bigger than you expected, suck it up and pay.
So I think that holds true for guys like you and me who make plenty enough money to make a nice trip to Vegas, but not so much money that the Bellagio is going to give us a free room with a private pool and its own butler. Right. I think it's those guys who are hurt right now because, they may have just lost a few $1 million in their stock portfolios. for the rest of us, we're worried, but we've still got the money to go. That's why we're going downtown.
Well, and I will say too, I think Vegas, not I think, I'm going to say it as an empirical fact. I think the Strip has too many luxury rooms, and I think the people on the Strip have overestimated what percentage of the American tourist and even the international tourist represents that elite tourist who doesn't mind the hidden fees. They don't bat an eyelash. There's too much inventory on the high end and not enough for middle class and upper middle class people. The Strip has over luxuried, and they're going to have to course correct.
100%. Well,
Yeah. All right.
John, is there anything else in Las Vegas travel, or should we talk about the news items coming out of Las Vegas?
I think let's go ahead and jump into some news stories. And again, listeners, we're recording before we release by several days, maybe a week. We're not claiming this is bleeding edge news. If you want bleeding edge, we're not the people. But here we go. So casino.org, which Bill didn't realize, publishes more than just Scott Robin's Vital Vegas. They actually do some of their other stuff too. They are reporting that the win might get as much as $1 billion for 38 unused acres on the Strip. They had development plans before the pandemic, but they might invest those funds overseas when it's not said that the land is for sale.
So, I think that that's partially an element of what you just talked about. There are only so many luxury hotel rooms that you can develop on the Strip, and the Wynn is clearly a luxury property, right? Like the Wynn's not going to offer a Motel 6 by Wynn. That's not their thing.
No.
Thus, that land, adjoining land's no good to them, but that $1 billion could be spent somewhere else to develop a new market. So to be clear, this is all very much still in rumor territory, but that's a rumor I wouldn't be surprised to actually see happen at some point.
By the way, let me throw a rumor in there that's not on our run sheet, but Scott at Vital Vegas has retweeted one of his rumors from last year. The Fontainebleau may actually wind up being sold and changing its business model because there's only so many luxury hotel rooms you can sell, and we seem to be tapped out. So Wynn seems to recognize that. They're not going to expand. I think Wynn survives this because Wynn is an elite experience, and there's an appetite for that. But some of the Johnny-come-latelys to luxury, by which I mean Resorts World and Fontainebleau, they may find there's not enough luxury for them. By the way, Bill, I was listening to the Vegas 360 podcast, and I think it was them. I listen to a lot of Vegas podcasts. They were talking about maybe Hilton needs to rethink it because there's 3 towers at Resorts World. 2 are up market. Maybe they only need 1 high-end tower and 2 that are more approachable. And I'm not saying there should be a Hampton Inn tower at Resorts World. On the other hand, if there's a Hampton Inn tower with a free breakfast buffet, your boy's showing up. So, I don't know.
I have a horrible vision of what the free Hampton Inn breakfast in Las Vegas looks like, and I don't want to fight that line, dude. Like that may wind up being my bright line, man.
I will say I'm showing my regional allegiance. I really have suspicion of any hotel breakfast buffet where the waffle maker does not make waffles shaped like Texas. I don't think other states do that.
What other shape would a waffle be, John? Like, what communist nonsense are you discussing?
Round or square, apparently?
But
I thought all
Texas
waffles were
round
Texas
or
shaped.
square. Therefore, a waffle can't be that shape.
Yeah, it's weird. Anyway, all right. So Bill, you take this one. This is up your alley.
So, folks, I am fundamentally a child of the desert, which means I am sensitive to there being enough water for people. That means that living in Alabama has been weird for me because water just falls out of the sky. Like, nobody's yard is brown. Like, you can run your shower or your washing machine or your sprinklers as long as you want. Nobody cares. That is not the situation in Las Vegas, and we haven't reported on Lake Mead water levels in a long time because last year was a pretty wet year. However, Newsweek is reporting that levels in Lake Mead are again declining precipitously. So when you do go to Vegas, please be thoughtful about your water consumption. The good folks at the Southern Nevada Water Authority do, I think, as good a work as any local government agency that I've seen in terms of conserving water. But I do worry about the long-term health of Las Vegas because a million people or whatever it is that live in the Las Vegas Valley, like they got to have water to drink and do stuff. And with Lake Mead declining, I am a little bit worried. John, have you been looking at the bathtub rings in Lake Mead when you've landed there lately?
Well, I haven't been in a while, and I did not have a window seat on my last flight, so unfortunately I didn't. But I will say people can just bathe in Navy Grog because this is my new favorite drink, and I like this more than I like you, and you're one of my best friends.
Yeah, but Navy Grog will always be there for you. Speaking of things which may or may not have been there for you, but looks like they actually will be, we used to talk a lot about the Oakland A's, now the Sacramento A's, soon to be the Las Vegas A's. And the Las Vegas Review-Journal is reporting that the site for the A's stadium, where the Tropicana used to was, has been largely graded, i.e. the bulldozers have been there, they've flattened the ground, they've now drilled holes in the ground for concrete and reinforcing steel. So it looks to me like this is a project that's actually going to happen. Like that was in doubt for a while, but they are actually moving dirt, drilling holes, pouring concrete, doing the other things you need for a Major League Baseball stadium. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be ready for opening day in 2028. But I'm now pretty confident that Major League Baseball happens in Las Vegas and that it happens on that site. John, what's your take on that?
So even though Scott at Vital Vegas, who we shamelessly name drop and steal stories from every episode in hopes of getting some attention, continues to insist that the A's are not coming to Las Vegas, I'm increasingly optimistic. And Bill, we've talked about this before. I cannot wait for the day that I can book a room at New York, or Park MGM and walk across the street and go watch the Rangers and the A's play and have a beer and I'm sure what will be a ridiculously overpriced hot dog and watch the ball game with MGM Sportsbook betting slips in my pocket so I can live and die by every pitch. Baseball in Vegas needs to happen. It needs to be on the Strip. So I really hope this takes place, and I'm glad to see there's progress because this makes my heart happy.
No, that absolutely makes my heart happy. So we'll see what happens. There's 3 years in which stuff can change, but yeah, I'd actually be willing. I would certainly be willing to bet your money on this happening, and I might be willing to bet my money now.
By the way, if you pour about an ounce of Stiggins pineapple rum, once you're at the halfway point of your Navy Grog, it only gets better. And Bill, I can't emphasize this enough. Plantaray Stiggins Fancy Pineapple Rum, you need this in your rum collection, Bill. I'm not wrong. You need this.
I may, but that space is currently occupied by perfectly good whiskey, and there's no reason to pull that whiskey off the shelf.
Controversial take, rum beats whiskey. I said what I said.
Huh. Well, that's the great thing about our country, John. You have every right in the world to be wrong on exactly that point. But in other news items, according to TheStreet.com, Brad Paisley closed his residency at the Encore on May the 10th. And that, so I'm a little surprised that he was ever there because I think I may be the only Brad Paisley fan who's ever even stayed at the Encore. Like the Encore does not seem like a country western crowd. And John, even though you're a country western fan, I don't know how you feel about that particular artist, but you don't tend to mean contemporary pop artists. But let's step back. More generally speaking, how do you feel about superstar residencies in Las Vegas as opposed to, say, just walking down Fremont Street and catching a free concert from whatever cover band happens to be there?
So I have never had the opportunity to catch a superstar because my budget or my calendar have never aligned. I would absolutely shell out bucks to catch Brad Paisley if I could. I think most popular country artists today, I'll just say it, they suck. I like Americana red dirt country. I like Robert Earl Keen. I like, just I'm so glad Cross Canadian Ragweed is touring again, even though they won't come to my end of far western Texas. I like country that sounds like country. I want Willie and Merle and Hank. And you know what? Brad Paisley belongs there. Brad Paisley, he wields the Telecaster like few ever have before him. But more to the point, there are some big superstars I would pay to catch in Vegas if I can ever get the stars to align. My wife wants to catch Lady Gaga doing jazz standards at Park MGM, and I want that too. Garth Brooks at Caesars, would love to catch that. You and I have caught George Lopez, the comedian at Mirage when that was still a thing. Yeah, it was at the Mirage. I'd rather catch Ron White, who I've caught here in my neck of the woods, because I love me some tater salad. Normally in Vegas, I gravitate towards the free and cheap shows because I am the baller on a budget. And normally when I roll into town, either there's no big name I want to see or the prices are out of reach for me. But if the stars align, absolutely. I would love to catch Brad Paisley at the Encore if I can ever get the calendar in my bank account to line up. Bring it on.
Here's the problem with superstar shows in Las Vegas. My buddy Ryan, who's going to share part of this trip with me next week, he was talking to his wife one day, innocently minding his own business, and his in-laws came in and said, "Hey, y'all, we want to pay for everybody to take a trip to Vegas." And they both said, okay. And then it turns out that Ryan was, against his will, forced to go to a Celine Dion concert, which would not have been his cultural preference nor, desired end state for any given evening. So occasionally there's some shows I'd really like to see, but gosh, there are some big stars out there who I would really rather not see if I can possibly help it. And Ryan, if you ever listen to this, I am very sorry for the Celine Dion experience. I will buy you a martini this week to wash that out of wherever, I guess, wash the sound out of your ear.
Okay, but first of all, taste is subjective, and we're not all going to like the same music. And it's just a matter of finding the right artist on the right date for the right price. Second of all, Celine Dion, her biggest hit, she ripped off Grover from Sesame Street. Near, far, near, far.
You don't have to go on and on.
Yeah. You get the point. Yeah. Anyway, all right, let's move from that. Jacob's Life in Vegas put out a story using some of the same data that we referred to earlier and other data points. He says that the slots downtown are not looser than the Strip. That actually, if you are playing slots, the Strip is better than downtown. Now, Bill, this jives with my observation. I think if you are a video poker gamer, which I primarily am, video poker is my jam, or a table gamer, you're a blackjack guy. Table games and video poker, way better downtown. But I've noticed slots, better on the Strip. So I think Jacob's on to something. Bill, what do you think? What is your recommendation to gamblers in Vegas? Where do you go based on what you like?
My recommendation to gamblers in Vegas is to use that money on a lovely steak dinner or perhaps a trip to the spa. However, if you must gamble, I almost always have better luck downtown. Now, I've won a couple of smallish jackpots on the Strip, something on the order of like $1,000 to $1,500. And I will say that if their comp programs will certainly result in you getting a nicer room than you would get downtown. But gambling is a decreasingly small part of my trips to Vegas. And when I want to go to Vegas to gamble, I don't know, I still think downtown almost all the time. you're saying the video poker is still better downtown, even though like regular slot machines are better on the strip, John?
Yes, and it's not even close. Downtown is, if you're going to play video poker, get off the strip. Get off the strip.
All right.
There are games downtown where the gambler actually has an advantage. Now, that depends on you having perfect strategy, and that's why they give you free drinks so that you don't maintain perfect strategy. So you've got to practice with a video poker trainer until it's muscle memory. But I can be dead zombie drunk and still know what cards to keep and throw away. And if you are a video poker person, downtown is far and away better than the strip. Plaza and the Four Queens especially, right? There are places you can look up online to see what video pay tables look like. Downtown Grand has some good games. The Main Street has some good games. You got to be careful, but video poker on the strip, no. I'll do it just because I like video poker, and if I'm on the strip, that's what I'll do. But you're not getting good value for your money. I will say the best slot sessions I've ever had were at Aria, of all places. The Planet Moolah game at Aria kept paying out for me. I had a great run. So I agree with what Jacob is saying. If you want to play slots, the strip is fine. Anything else, get off the strip. Downtown, or go find a local casino. Go to a station casino joint. Go to some other place. But if you are a table gamer or a video poker gamer, the strip is not for you. It's not.
All right. Huh. Well, that is good to know, and that's why I care about data, because sometimes it tells me things which I did not expect. Returning to the theme of superstar residencies in Las Vegas, the New York Post is reporting, quote, Katy Perry is no longer welcome in Vegas, and several other newspapers are running the same headline. Now, that's a pretty vast over-dramatization of the situation, but the facts underneath it, and folks, never just read the headline, always read several paragraphs deep into the story. So Katy Perry's 3-year residency at Resorts World cost the hotel a ton of money. She was getting paid somewhere between $750,000 and $900,000 per show and wasn't generating anywhere near that amount of revenue, although we don't know exactly how much revenue she was generating. She wants to return. She talked quite loudly about wanting to, have a longer residency in Vegas, but is not wanted at Resorts World or much of anywhere else. And that residency ran from 2021 to 2023. And John, that surprises me because some superstar residencies are enormously popular, and some of them seem to have just bombed. And while I'm not the demographic to whom Katy Perry appeals, I mean, she's been a super popular artist for a long time. So what do you think determines whether or not a superstar residency is one of the fantastically successful ones or not?
Do the people that go to Vegas listen to your music, and are the tickets priced in a zone that you can afford? That's it. Old people have the money. The Eagles made all the money at the Sphere. You know why? Because we're old. Bill, how do you feel about the Eagles?
I would rather see them than Katy Perry.
Damn right. And that's what it boils down to. Do the people who go to Vegas and can afford tickets like you? That's all it is. Katy Perry, very attractive lady. Look, I dance better than Left Shark from that Super Bowl show. I'm not buying Katy Perry tickets. If she's free on Fremont Street, sure. And I think that's the problem, is the people that are super into Katy Perry aren't super into Vegas, and you've got to make those stars align.
All right, you do, which I guess is part of why I was surprised about the Brad Paisley news. There are absolutely Brad Paisley fans in Las Vegas. I'm
one of them.
That so many of those folks, though, were staying at the Encore. But then again, maybe that's not where they were staying. Maybe they simply went down there for the concert, then went back to wherever else they were.
Yeah, I would like to see Mr. Paisley play at Gillies at Treasure Island. I think that's the right spot for him.
Oh, 100%.
Maybe Blake Shelton's old red. God, I've had a lot of rum, Bill.
And I am super proud of you. So I think then before we get to a Dine Drink Vegas WTF moment, since we don't have any Las Vegas WTF, John, do you mind if I share a really quick Ireland WTF news story?
By all means, the listeners need this one.
All right, so folks, again, something on the order of 24% of our audience is from somewhere in Ireland. God bless you. Thank you so much. We hope you'll reach out to us on social media at Dine Drink Travel. My older son goes to school in Dublin, and my younger son is getting ready to go to school in Cork. But this isn't their downloads because neither one of them listens to their dad that much. But my older boy was on a plane in Dublin earlier today, getting ready to fly back to the U.S. It was an American Airlines flight where, again, nothing ever goes wrong and everything is always perfect all the time. And the flight was shortly delayed, and they had to figure out what to do because, he says, one of their flight attendants got arrested by the Irish cops, and I really want to know what went down. Now, I don't have all of the details, but that is absolutely a situation that goes in the WTF category. Like, what in the actual fire would have caused that flight attendant to get arrested? Apparently, they just flew with one less flight attendant than they would normally have, which somehow fit all of the safety regulations. But yeah, that was a new one. The other thing which surprised me is, John, since we started this podcast, the boy actually landed successfully in Dallas, and actually got there a few minutes early in spite of the problems on the front. So, flight attendant arrested by Irish cops, and I don't know what you got to do to piss off an Irish cop because I've been drinking in Ireland and I haven't managed to do it yet. But this flight attendant did it, and then somehow American Airlines, whose record on on-time arrival is, I think you can generously say, incomplete, somehow they still got the boy home. I understand nothing about the nature of the world, John.
My headcanon is that her name is Fiona, and whatever she did, if we mentioned it on this podcast, we'd be banned in half the world. I'm sticking with that.
I think that is fair.
Okay, on that note, I think we've done all the damage we could do. So, Bill, why don't you tell everybody where they can find more Dine Drink Travel and Dine Drink Vegas content on the interwebs?
You can find me on essentially every social media platform, whether it is X, Blue Sky, InstaStat, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, at Dine Drink Travel. You can also find us on the web at dinedrinktravel.com. You can find me on YouTube at Dine Drink Travel if what you want to see is things about cruises or airport lounges or air travel. And most importantly, you can find me on YouTube at Dine Drink Vegas or Dine Drink Vegas Shorts, depending on what sort of format you want, for some short and focused videos about all of our trips to Las Vegas, more of which should be coming up within the next couple of weeks. And John, where can they find you?
They can find me on Twitter or X at Dine Drink John. And by the way, if you want to see the worst room review ever on YouTube, my Golden Gate Suite review on the Dine Drink Travel web channel is a terrible example of how not to make a room review video, but you should watch it anyway and then make fun of me. Anyway, we know there's a lot of podcasts you could listen to, so we're so glad you tuned into ours. If you have a friend that loves traveling to Las Vegas or an enemy that hates listening to old fat white guys from America talk about things, please share our podcast with them. And until the next episode, thanks for listening and happy travels.